I think the Western culture about talking about purpose kind of misses the ball and makes it about a thing that you have to work out in your head before you seek out and make it happen. Whereas it's not that at all. It's something that came just because I decided to give and I didn't realize that that's what was going to come from it. It just came. And the first step was make yourself available to other people and help other people. And when I think about the people on the planet that stand out as having had an amazing purpose in life, like Mother Teresa, like Mahatma Gandhi, like Nelson Mandela, they didn't make it about themselves. They made it all about other people. And they just happened to be the vehicle that led the voice to the particular struggle of the tribe that they were leading.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
It's Bill from recoveryafterstroke.com. This is episode 121, and my guest today is Nicholas Kemp. Nicholas is the founder and host of the Ikigai podcast, and our conversation today is about unearthing your life's purpose and the role that the felt sense of Ikigai plays whilst on life's journey. Now, in case you've never heard of Ikigai, let me explain it briefly. Ikigai is a Japanese-based life philosophy involving daily rituals, living your values, building intimate relationships, fulfilling your life's roles, and pursuing a life goal with a healthy sense of urgency. It can help you live longer and give you motivation and resilience in times of hardship. It can be your path to self-actualization and to becoming your truer self. This is truly going to be a great episode. Now, before we get started, if you have ever wondered what else I can do to help you with your stroke recovery, you should know that you can now get recovery after stroke coaching right from the comfort of your own home. I too am a 3-time stroke survivor and a brain surgery survivor, and I have built for you what I was missing when I was sent home from hospital in the hope that you don't have to do stroke recovery as tough as I did. Support packages give you access to a variety of tools 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that you can also work on other areas of stroke recovery that you don't get the chance to at physical therapy or rehabilitation. With tailored support available for less than $8.50 per week, all recovery after stroke support packages bring stroke recovery to you in the comfort of your own home. To try it out and see if it is right for you, you will get the first 7 days free, as well as a 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. As a bonus, you will also get 2 face-to-face Zoom calls with myself to take your recovery to the next level. So go to recoveryafterstroke.com/support to sign up. It won't cost you anything for the first 7 days, and you will get a full refund if you are not happy after 30 days. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And now it's on with the show. Nicholas Kemp, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill. It's an honor and pleasure to be talking to you today.
Mate, it is. Every time I start a podcast, I talk about with the people that I start with, I always tell them that I love the fact that they're on my podcast. I really appreciate it. It's amazing that they are on my podcast. And it really is. It always is. And most of those people are stroke survivors, and they take us through a conversation about where their stroke started, their stroke journey started, all the challenges that they're facing, what they're overcoming, and they're talking about how they're getting to the end of their recovery, or that acute part of their recovery where they're starting to find a new normal. And part of that discussion sometimes has a portion of purpose in that conversation where we talk about purpose. But for many people, the conversation doesn't talk about purpose, because I think that purpose is a difficult concept to grasp. Now, the reason I contacted you, you're a mate, I've known you for a while, and I think you're a great guy. And that's a good start, isn't it?
That is a good start. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you've invited me. So.
And then I've started listening to your podcast that you recently launched called the Ikigai podcast. And you're a fascinating guy because you've lived in Japan for a long time. You're married to an amazing Japanese lady, and you kind of became embedded in the culture, and you've come out of it, and you're back in Australia with some amazing bits of knowledge and learning that you've taken away from it that I feel like, from listening to your podcast, has enhanced your life and really spoke to me when I started listening to the different episodes that you've got on the podcast so far. And I felt like I wish I knew more about this ancient wisdom that seems to come from this mystic kind of place, mystical place called Japan that we don't know much about other than what we've seen of TV. So, firstly, can I just start by asking you to give me a little bit about your journey that got you to Japan, how long you were there, and then what got you coming back to Australia?
So my first trip was actually when I was 5. My father was a physicist, and he had done some research which required him to travel to various countries, and he worked for the CSIRO. So
That's an Australian organisation, a research organisation.
yeah. So when that happened, he was given a first class ticket. So he decided to turn it into, I guess, a family ticket for my mother and my brother and myself. And I don't really remember the trip, but I have sort of flashes of memory. And one of the countries we visited was Japan. And I guess it had a lasting impression on me because in my early 20s, when I was working in hospitality, probably partly due to the tourism boom, a lot of Japanese were coming to Australia. I really wanted to go to Japan. And then I was awarded a traineeship through my college. I was studying at William English College. And I got this 1-year traineeship to go and work for a company that had a chain of restaurants, and they had big plans to expand to Melbourne. So that was in 95, 96. And that was a great experience. It was just amazing. And that year went really quickly. And then that company's plans fell through, and I actually wanted to go back to Japan, and I didn't really want to work in hospitality because the long hours and all that sort of thing. So I thought I'd go back, and really the only way I could do that was, well, not the only way, but sort of the easiest way was to go back and teach English. So that happened in 1998. And I went back to Tokyo. So the first trip with the traineeship was to Tokyo. And then I worked at one of the commercial English schools there, and worked there for about 3 years. And sort of during this relationship with Japan, I'd met my wife. I actually met my wife before I went to Japan in Melbourne. And we were just sort of friends. And she was very shy and pretty hard to get to know. But we used to write to each other. And then if we ever met in person, she wouldn't even acknowledge me. But when we were sort of different countries apart, she'd write to me. So she's one of the few people I've ever handwritten to. Eventually we got married.
You wore her down enough so that she spoke to you.
One thing led to another. So, and then in 2002, was it 2002? Yeah, 2002. I mean, I went back and forth to Japan a few times, but in 2002, we went back and I lived near where my wife's from for 6 years. And that was a small town and famous for pottery. And her father and her brothers make handmade pottery. But so I got to experience Tokyo, the big city, and also living in almost a village, really. And Yeah, Japan's a very interesting country. One of the regrets I had was, I mean, I started my own school eventually, and it really tied me down because I was the only teacher, and so I didn't get to explore of Japan as much as I wanted. And now I'm quite desperate to. We try to go back every year, but I'd love to go back and live there with the sort of new freedom I have from for working myself to discover all these things that I'm really now rediscovering. Japan is an interesting country to live in. You can end up having I used to describe it as a love hate relationship. It wasn't that I hated Japan, it was aspects of living there that I struggled with. You're always a foreigner in Japan. It's very hard to integrate fully, and there are these unique problems in Japan that just don't exist outside the world, and they're almost upsetting because they're so unusual, and there's such a lack of support for people with mental health issues. And they have all these things like hikikomori and another one's lonely deaths and all these problems. So
Yep. What's hikikomori?
hikikomori are these shut-ins. So these men or these teenagers just decide they're not going to go to school anymore and they're not going to do anything, and they lock themselves in their rooms. There are documentary on this on YouTube that'll blow your mind. And you've got literally hundreds of thousands of Japanese men who have lived in their room for the past 5 to 15 years.
Right.
And their parents, probably out of shame, they don't want neighbors to know. They hide the problem. So they feed the problem. They'll feed their child, they'll leave food at their door. And you're talking months or years go by where parents don't actually even see their own child, their own son, despite him living in the house. And it sort of blows your mind. And they spend most of their time online, but they don't venture outside. They have no friends. They have no job.
Wow. And
Yeah,
this is a common thing that happens in Japan.
this is an epidemic in Japan. Like, it's a huge problem.
Is it a
And
new problem? As in, is it a modern problem, or is it something that used to occur in the past?
no, it's definitely a modern problem, but I think it started happening 20 years ago, but now it's
Right.
quite a big problem, and there's just a lack of resources and funding and organisations to help these young men who clearly have a lack of purpose in their lives.
Yeah.
But I should touch on, it was this second trip when I started teaching that I stumbled upon this word ikigai.
Yeah.
And it was one of those conversations you have a clear memory of, and I remember sort of where and when it happened, and
Wow.
being introduced to this word and being sort of stunned that it encapsulated, the reason why you live and you battle on with life. And that was sort of in '98, so really before the internet, and I did what everyone else does, and I went and told all my coworkers, "Oh, there's this amazing word called ikigai, and it means something like the life purpose or the reason why you live and get up in the morning." And so now, sort of in the past 2 years, because of this misinterpreted idea of it being a framework of doing something that you love, that you're good at, that the world needs, and that you can be paid for, I guess I felt an obligation to really, study it and then share with the rest of the world what it really is. Because I knew straight away when I saw the Venn diagram, I thought, oh, there must be a misinterpretation or a Western interpretation, because Japanese would never define it like that. But then I started seeing it everywhere.
Yeah. So what you're referring to is that somewhere, somehow, this term ikigai became popularized, and as a result of that, was popularized slightly incorrectly. The things that you mentioned, though, that it stands for are still amazing things. What were they again?
So that framework's still a very helpful framework. It was
Yeah.
actually created by a Spanish astrologer, and it was just something he sort of meditated on and it came to him. So it was this idea that if you're doing something that you love, that you're good at, and that the world needs, and you can be paid for it, it could be purpose, perhaps obviously in the framework of your work. Now, he just shared it in Spanish on his Facebook page, and it got quite a lot of interest. And then someone obviously found it and translated it into English. And then that probably went a little bit viral. And then one day, someone who I've interviewed, Mark Wynn, he stumbled upon it. And then after watching a TED Talk on how to live to be 100 plus, it was this TED Talk about blue zones. One of the countries, or one of the areas, is Okinawa. And Dan Buettner, who presented the talk, briefly mentions Ikigai in this talk. He said, the Okinawans, they live to be 100 and they have this lifestyle and they grow their own vegetables and there's a strong sense of community and there's this word Ikigai. And so this guy, Mark, he just thought it'd be a cool idea to merge Ikigai with this Venn diagram. So he just replaced the word purpose with Ikigai. And he really was only doing it for his own personal community, like his own.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Friends and people who read his personal blog.
Right.
So for him, it was a passing thought. And really, he had no knowledge of Ikigai at all, other than what he learned from that TED Talk. And that TED Talk also created the perception that it was a word from Okinawa, which it isn't. So their purpose is an important aspect of Ikigai, but it has nothing to do with getting paid. Japanese will tell Australia, Ikigai has nothing to do with getting paid. Yeah. And for many Japanese, it's something they pursue once they retire, because then they have the freedom, because they're not working, they're not growing up children, and because they're usually quite fit and healthy from the age of 60, 65, they do need something to occupy their time. But also, Japan actually had its own Ikigai boom in the 60s with literature and books. And that's where it's explored, perhaps as a way to self-actualization. And that's what I'm really interested in, all the literature back then. And that's what I've been sharing.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that Venn diagram, and for anyone who's watching or listening, there'll be a copy of that Venn diagram that you can look at the recoveryafterstroke.com website, where this episode will reside. If you just go to the podcasts tab at the website, you'll find this episode listed with all the other episodes. It says that basically at the top it says, that which you love, that which the world needs, that which you can be paid for, that which you are good at. And then inside it says, it's your passion, it's your mission, it's your vocation, it's your profession. And it seems like an amazing concept, that one, because If I feel like I'm doing something that I love and something that the world needs, something that I can be paid for, and something that I'm good at, I'm pretty close to finding my purpose in life. Like I'm feeling like I'm succeeding in life because up until the time that I was doing all those things, there was something seriously missing. I was going to work because I needed the money. I didn't really love it. Uh, the world didn't really need me to go to work and make money to pay the mortgage. Um, so if I'm doing that description of how to go, if I'm going about my life in that way, I'm feeling really good about myself, and that's not a bad framework. But ikigai seems to be more this type of a felt sense, something that you feel and experience internally rather than something that you do physically externally. And it might be part of those things that you do might be part of helping to create that internal feeling, but I couldn't see that internal feeling happening for you. Only you can experience it, and you could describe when it was being experienced by you, but I wouldn't be able to see it unless you told me. Did I capture anything
You're
there?
close. I mean, you are close. So if we were to properly define ikigai, you do it in two parts. So you have your ikigai source. So your source could be a relationship. So a very good example is a child, your child. So that's your ikigai source or your ikigai object. And then ikigai kan, which translates to ikigai perception or ikigai feeling or ikigai awareness, would be these feelings of love, joy, pride, hope for the future. So it's personal for everyone and it's unique. Everyone's ikigai will be different. So that's why if your child is your ikigai, which most likely will be for most parents at some stage, especially in the young years, that's why it's got nothing to do with, getting paid or being good at, when you're a new parent, you're learning. So you're not going to be a good parent. I mean, you'll be a loving and caring parent, but it doesn't make you the greatest parent. So that's how Kamiya Miyako, who I'll briefly mention, who I've kind of termed the mother of Ikigai psychology. She wrote this amazing book in 1966. It's only available in Japanese, but that's how she defines it. Now, you can actually tell when someone has Ikigai because they do have this sense of purpose. Someone who wrote a really interesting article, who I'm interviewing next week, he kind of says Ikigai, the feeling of Ikigai is almost contagious because when you see someone who's living their Ikigai, it kind of rubs off on you. Now, that would vary in degree depending on each person. But we probably should just, there's a few things we probably need to clear up. Not all Japanese have Ikigai. We're all human, so we all struggle with life. We have our problems, and not every Japanese would have Ikigai. And for most Japanese, it's not even a special word. It's just a word they grow up with. Now, I mentioned on James's podcast, like it's quite hard to translate this word. And I said it would be like trying to describe mateship. So if I asked you to suddenly explain mateship, you wouldn't be able to tell me straight away. You'd probably have to think, how am I going to explain mateship to someone who doesn't live in Australia?
Yeah.
And then if I ask someone else, they'll probably give me a completely different perspective, or at least a different interpretation. But if you went to Europe or the UK or America and you saw a book on mateship and it had mateship in the middle and it had friendliness and easygoingness and it had some framework, you'd probably find that a bit unusual because there's no framework for mateship in Australia. So it's the West has definitely embraced this word, but to the Japanese, it's just a part of their vocabulary. But it is an important concept, and like many people, or some people pursue it, and others don't. Obviously, probably because they struggle with life or they're too busy.
Yeah, for the standard reasons that we in life don't understand our purpose or don't know what our purpose is. I feel like I've found my purpose. So maybe by the end of this episode, I'll get to understand whether that's my ikigai. We'll explore that. Now, when you talk about mateship, for the people listening who are from a Western culture, they might understand if you and I tried to tease out what mateship is. So then we can kind of refer it back to ikigai and then kind of bring in the purpose conversation. So for me, mateship is about, depending on the circumstance, going far beyond the call of duty for somebody who's in need, somebody who needs a hand. It's about putting that person before me. It's about making sure that they feel supported, that I haven't let them down. And I'm thinking about like a natural disaster, how Australians come together during a natural disaster like the bushfires or flooding to support their mates, to make themselves available to help out wherever they can. So I can practice mateship from Victoria, which is 3,000 kilometres away from Queensland, if they have a flood, by sending a parcel of food, by donating to a certain organisation, by bringing awareness to the plight of the people who lost their homes during the flood and supporting one of the local charities. So, and I can also be a mate to a friend of mine who's in need, who's next door and has had a rough time of it and needs somebody to talk to or to ask help from. And I can be a mate to that person as well. I can put my arm around them and make them feel like they've got somebody and they're supported. So I agree with you that you can't really describe it or put a...
Because I would add to that by saying, but there's this sense of, it's very well natured and easygoing. We're not polite about it. We'll just go and help.
Yeah.
Whereas in like Japan, they'd be very cautious about helping people, but that's still help in a different way. But we'll go out of our way to help someone. We wouldn't seek anything in return. There'd be a bit of humour. And there's also this connection that I've read to World War, the history of the World War One, and maybe in particular Gallipoli campaign, and then I found out the word's origins actually German, and it means something related to table, being around a table, and so that that might relate to the whole barbecue culture we have. So
right.
So that's what I mean. If we were trying to explain mateship on a podcast, this is how Japanese would have to approach ikigai. It's complicated. There's a history to it. It means different things to different people. I think mateship matters to you and me, but there might be other Australians where mateship doesn't matter that much.
And especially if they're not first or second generation Australians, if they haven't been born in Australia, because there's that cultural difference, especially in the early years when you arrive into a country, you don't understand how things operate. And I know my parents who have been here since the 60s wouldn't necessarily know what mateship is, but being from a Greek background, they would know what philotimo is.
Ah, yes.
Which is another concept that's elusive, that's similar to ikigai and mateship. And if you describe somebody as that person has philotimo, αυτός ο άνθρωπος έχει φιλότιμο, there is no bigger compliment than you can say about somebody. So when you ask a Greek person to describe philotimo, they'll say to you, literally the word philotimo is made up by two words. It's philo and timo. Philo is friend and timor is honor. So the word literally means honor the friend, which sounds like mateship when we talk about the spirit of mateship is kind of honoring somebody else when
Mm.
they require when they have a
Help.
need. Whereas, so with philotimo, by honoring the friend, you could honor them just when they come to your house and you make them a coffee. You can honor them when you take them a, a batch of your homegrown tomatoes when they're running low. You can honor them in so many different ways, and nobody does it the same, and everyone does it differently. And it's really hard to describe philotimo, but when you describe somebody as having philotimo, there is no bigger compliment.
Yeah, we should probably touch on the etymology of ikigai because that helps understand it too. So ikigai is composed of sort of two words. So iki comes from the verb ikiru, which means to live. That's really daily living. And gai comes from the word kai, which can mean shell. And the actual kanji for shell in the word sort of represents decorated shell. And so back in the Heian period, which was about like 1,000 years ago, the wealthy would collect these shells and play a game called kaiawase and be like matching cards. So you'd have these beautiful decorated shells on the inside and they'll be placed down. And they'd have sets up to 600 to 360 shells. And they're trying to match them. And these are all hand decorated and painted.
You have to find the pairs, do you?
Yeah, you have to find the pairs. That's what I'm assuming. Yeah. And so as a result, this is sort of the etymology of the word, how the value associated to ikigai, the value of living, the history is in this word kai for this shell, which was used in this game called kaiawase. So it really translates to the value in living, the value and find in living. And that's why that purpose Venn diagram kind of conflicts with the idea, because it's not really about achieving a life goal. It's more about your daily living. So that's why for many Japanese, their ikigai can be something quite noble and small. Almost like a private personal pursuit. But at the same time, it can be the pursuit of a life-defining goal. So it's almost like the spectrum. And going back to the literature of the 60s, that I'm researching, there's almost two or three schools of sort of thought of what it is. So I like to think of it as the spectrum where you can appreciate the little joys of life, but it can go into pursuing a life goal and trying to self-actualize, but where you're not trying to be the best version of yourself. You're just trying to be your most honest self, and that means living your values.
Right. So there's a sense coming to me of gratitude. So there's a portion of gratitude in there in ikigai. Living your values is something amazing. Being able to live your values, truly live your values, and then bringing that gratitude into how you're able to experience your values and how you're able to live your values. For me, I wake up in the morning and I'm grateful for the little things, all those little things. So perhaps I wasn't before I became a stroke survivor. Before I became a stroke survivor, maybe I had no idea about why it was important to practice gratitude and why being grateful was beneficial to me and my life. But then when I've nearly lost everything, being able to tie my shoelaces became something that I could be grateful of. And having that awareness to become grateful that I became grateful for tying my shoelaces helped me live my values, and my values were never about having the best car, the biggest house, and all that junk that we do. My values were always about just connecting with people and appreciating the simple things and understanding what was important. But somehow that got lost in just general run of the mill Western life, which includes mortgages, school fees, jobs, and all the junk that goes with it, you know. So so what you're saying is that within Ikigai is this way of experiencing the opportunity to practice your values, and then also having a level of gratitude for things that are just taken for granted and that are really the important parts of life.
Yeah, so that's sort of two aspects of Ikigai. One aspect that can clearly define Ikigai compared to happiness, and this probably would relate strongly to yourself and people who have suffered a stroke, is with Ikigai, there's this idea that you feel your life is moving forward and you have things to look forward to. And in so many books that I've read, this is mentioned that, even if your life is, you're struggling with your life and you're in trouble now, you can actually feel Ikigai in the moment if you believe things will get better and that you can action things. So it's not a false sense of hope.
Right.
It's real belief. Okay, right now, I'm struggling. Maybe if we related to someone who suffered a stroke with my movements, I can't do what I used to do. But I know if I do my rehab and with the support of others, and if I stay focused, that my life will get better. And so with that feeling that, my life will get better, it does motivate you to keep on living and to be proactive. So this idea that your life is moving forward and you do have a bright future, and Ikigai responds to proactiveness. You've got to be proactive. So it's not this esoteric, nice idea. It's, all right, if I get off the phone, if I reduce the number of hours I'm on Netflix, and if I actually just do something, go back to a hobby from my childhood, or start exercising, or take the time to say to a significant other, I want more connection with you, you're going to experience Ikigai, meaning you're going to have more value in your life.
Right.
So that's a really important point. And then, there's this idea of harmony and sustainability in your relationships. And this is seeking intimacy and connection, but it's also being aware of your own actions and what you say. So something I learned from Ken Moggy, who's a modern author. He says, every time we open our mouth and say something, there's always this possibility we're going to alienate someone just because we want to say our opinion or get something off our chest. And so we don't often talk about sustainability. We probably talk about harmony in relationships, but we don't think, I don't want to say, we don't think, if I say this, I might end up eroding my relationship or affecting my relationship with someone just because I have the urge to say something. So that's really typical of Japanese culture. Japanese are very, probably overly concerned, I would say, of what they think of others. And so as a result, they're very careful about not offending others or creating disharmony. But I think we can definitely apply it to our relationships, where we think, well, I want good relationships. I want to be in harmony. I want intimacy, especially with the people I care about.
You've just described me to a T, because there was definitely a time where my relationships weren't the best. That was, I'll call that before stroke as well. And then one of my goals became to make my relationships better. And one of the reasons it became a goal was because I might have kicked the bucket and I didn't want to leave the planet with people thinking, yeah, he was all right, but he was always cranky, or, he had all these behavioral issues that we never really told him about, that he thought was normal. So one of the things that I became aware of was how I was impacting others, and I sought out a way uh, to make good in with people whom I had mistreated, and never mistreated them on purpose, mistreated them just out of the natural course of being myself, the natural way that I did my life. And therefore, I reached out to a lot of people and apologized to a lot of people. I said thank you, and I told a lot of people that I loved them, and I kind of made good with the world, so that if I did croak it, if I did croak it, I went out, at least not with that on my conscience, and
Mm.
hopefully created a little less distress for the people who were left behind. Um, as well as that, the thing that you said about uh, being your path, having your path moving forward, and your life is improving, even if it's on a small, minute amount. And I talk about the one percenters, doing those things that each 1% at the end of 365 days, if you do 1% every day, that's 365%.
Mm.
Um, and that doesn't seem dramatic to a lot of people. Like, my life has improved 1%, like, big deal. But it is that when you're able to reflect at the end of that 365 days back to see how far you've come, it is a big deal, because there were small steps. They didn't take a lot of effort, a lot of energy. They just took a little bit of practice and a little bit of faith in that when you did do that, the results were going to come. They may not come today, tomorrow, or next week, but they will come, and just keep working towards getting a result, and don't hang your hat on what the result will be exactly. It's more about, let's just do something, and let's reflect back and see what the result is when there's a big enough delay in time, or enough time has passed, so that we can actually physically either see the result or experience the result in another way, and actually be uh, we can be grateful for having taken that leap of faith into improving our life by 1% every day.
Yeah, I guess we could relate it to the Kaizen principle, or what's interpreted as the Kaizen principle, this continuous improvement. Um,
Yep.
but it is one of the reasons why Japan makes these superior products, because you know, some companies or some craftsmen just have this pursuit of perfection, knowing they'll never attain it, but they just keep going, and they'll take extraordinary care of fine details, the small details that people don't first notice. But it's only after a certain amount of time, and suddenly people start to recognize these amazing products or this amazing craftsmanship, and they're sort of astounded once they find out, you know, a craftsman's been working, 30 years on a particular product or something. Um, but it's something, yeah, we can relate to our daily life if we take time to practice something or doing something. And you do that sort of methodically, just for a few minutes a day. After a year or 2 years, it will be significant improvement. And it sounds like your strokes, obviously, as hard as it was, it's sort of been a blessing in disguise, and it's made you realize all these things. There was aspects of your relationships that you thought you needed to face and do things to improve, and you've got this sense of mission now with what you're doing with your podcast and your blog and your website, and your public speaking, and you've obviously got this desperate mission, not desperate mission, but this passionate mission to help people. And this doesn't happen overnight. You've taken daily action to make this happen. And I'm sure through it, there were times where you thought, I don't know if I can keep going, but you persevered. So
That was yesterday as well, by the way.
there you go. So yeah, so we're sold this delusion in life that if we're happy when we have social recognition, or when we paid off the house, or if we have good clothes or a car, or if we look attractive, or if we're, people lose weight not to get healthy, but to look better. And all these things ultimately won't give us happiness, because the problem is we're chasing happiness when what we should be trying to get is life satisfaction. So that's another aspect, sort of between maybe the Western idea of happiness and this idea of ikigai. Is there's 7 needs of ikigai, and one of them is this idea of life satisfaction. So you could get up and exercise in the morning and maybe not really enjoy it, but after you've finished exercising, you would have this sense of, okay, I actually did something worthwhile and positive, and now I'm feeling better. Now you're probably not happy, but you're feeling a lot better than if you didn't get up and then you turn to social media to try and get your happiness fix, which you wouldn't get.
Yeah.
So I really like this idea of, if we focus on life satisfaction and fulfillment, in the process, we're going to have more moments of happiness, because we're going to be, our well-being is going to be better than what it was. And we'll be more receptive to things that will spark our happiness, because our well-being state is better. So that's a really significant aspect of go for life satisfaction rather than trying to seek happiness.
Yeah, happiness is a byproduct of seeking out things that are satisfying. For me, I seek out connection with amazing people. You, the guys that we meet with once a month at the pub, the people who I connect with online through the podcast, all those moments provide me with a level of satisfaction. And I sought out to do that at the beginning, thinking that I'm going to do something good for the community, for the stroke community. But actually, it does me more good than I realized. And that makes me happier than I have been. And it wasn't happiness I was chasing. I was chasing this sense of me feeling better about my stroke situation, my stroke journey, which then became about somebody else's stroke journey, which when they gave me feedback that they were doing better, that made me feel better. And then this cycle of increased levels of happiness and life satisfaction just took off and snowballed, and it became this massive thing. And I didn't even realize that my happiness was being affected and that I was happier. I just was. And now that you are making me focus on it, that's what I'm noticing. That's what came from it. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't get angry. That doesn't mean I don't get frustrated. It doesn't mean that I don't have bad days. It does not mean that my left side never hurts. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that the more I do for other people, the more I'm doing for myself, and that just somehow creates more happiness. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but clearly that's why I'm still doing it after nearly 120 episodes, because it's tough to do a podcast for an hour, edit it, transcribe it, pay for the website, do all those things, get it up live to just put it out into the world. And then if I was doing that and not getting any satisfaction out of it, I would have stopped ages ago, and it wouldn't have made me happy. I would have been dissatisfied and unhappy with the whole process of what I went through and what I didn't achieve. Now, that being said, if I had if enough time had passed and I was able to reflect on that negative situation, this potential negative situation of my podcast not succeeding, say 5 years in the future from now, if I was able to look back on this hypothetical time when my podcast didn't succeed, perhaps the lesson that I learned would have made me happier in the future. So the pursuit of making a difference and doing this positive thing, even though it failed and made me feel negative now, I feel like it still would have given me an opportunity to reflect on it positively down the track, because I would have learned something from it. And I love learning from failing, and I love learning from my mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, you find meaning when you're serving others, when you're being of service to others, and you start getting feedback. You realize you're needed. And another ikigai need is resonance, where you're accepted by others and you have meaningful relationships. And if you're needed and you get that feedback through this medium of the podcast, or it doesn't really matter what it is, then you know the value of your life. And it's not a material thing. It's someone expressing gratitude and thanks for what you've done. And what's sort of become evident to me while we've been talking is you have a role now from your three strokes and your experience of the frustration of trying to find information on recovery. In the process, obviously, you came to this realization, maybe I've got to be the guy who helps others get information on recovery. And here we are now talking. You've done over 100 podcasts. You've got a website, and you've been very generous with all your information. And I'd like to quote you something that really helped me understand a core aspect of Ikigai that was missing for me. Sort of for the past year and a half, I was researching, and once I read this quote or this article, it really clicked for me. So, and this is from a venture capitalist too, ironically. So, the secret trick to finding your Ikigai is to find your role within a community, your community. When I say your community, I mean the people around you that define who you are. Every person you regularly interact with. Your community can be often segmented into what many people appropriately call tribes. So you've created this community now of people who've had a stroke, and you've interviewed obviously many people in that community. And you have a role now, and your role is obviously to share knowledge, to help people recover from stroke. And that is a role unique to you. And even if someone in a different part of the world was doing something similar, you're still unique in that role because you're doing it differently and you're affecting people differently. So I think one key takeaway is if we can find our role within our personal community, and that can be a global community online, or it can be your local community, can be your family, can be your friends. Once you know your role, then you know how to serve people. And then, yeah, you're going to have this life satisfaction. You're going to have connection, intimacy, all these benefits, value, meaning. So it's great that you sort of carved it out when I'm sure you could have been angry and, resentful at what life had dealt you.
And I was angry and resentful, and I think there's a time for that as well, especially when everything gets put on hold and you get you stagnate, and it's difficult to break the cycle of stagnation because you're moving forward is influenced by other people at certain times in a stroke recovery, and those people are doctors, and those people are physios, and those people are all these other people, and they're trying to help you, but at the same time, they are keeping you um, sort of in this holding pattern of recovery. And although recovery sounds positive, it also can have its negative aspects. And for me, the biggest negative aspect was feeling like I was in this holding pattern of going to 3 appointments a week, which meant that by the time I went to those 1 hour appointments every third day or every second day, I had spent an hour getting there, an hour being there, an hour coming home, and then I was exhausted, and then my entire day was gone. So, although that was a really good thing to help me recover and get back to walking and get back to being physically active, it also got in the way with my life because I couldn't get back to work while I was spending that much time away from work because they just couldn't happen. So, if you allow, if I allowed my head to play the blame game on why life was shit, it was definitely everybody else keeping me in this space. And part of that was because I lacked the gratitude at that time for having the services available to help rehabilitate me. Part of that was because I didn't know what my purpose was in life anymore. I wasn't a dad who was able to muck around with my sons, go to work, and support my family. You know, there was many things that I'd lost or that were put on hold, and I took it badly. I took it negatively. But then somehow things seem to just turn around, and I can't pinpoint exactly when that was, but I have a suspicion it was when the idea came to my head. And even though for a number of years I didn't do anything about it, when the idea came to my head in hospital that I should do a podcast that shares story about people recovering from stroke, I imagine that's when it kind of turned the corner, and that led to all these other experiences that I've never had before. I've never had the connection with people from around the world like I have now, with this tribe and community that exists that I didn't know was a tribe or a community. I've never had people that I can reach out to that are like me in so many ways, even though they're completely different and from different parts of the world. So, um, so it's been a fascinating journey. And when people do ask me about my journey, especially now when I speak about it at 8 or 9 years down the track, uh, and I tell them that I found my purpose, and I haven't really deeply thought about that or discussed it with anyone other than you right now, but it's what I said to people, and I didn't really understand what I was saying, but I did say, I think I found my purpose.
It's a powerful yeah. It's I think the problem with purpose is it's something we do here and we read about, and we are, if we're lucky, yeah, we find a good book and it says you've got to find purpose, but it's, for whatever reason at that time, it's just not a powerful message for you to understand. Something significant maybe has to happen in your life for you to think. I think you have to think, how can I help others? Rather than, what can I get out of this? And it sort of, to go with another quote, which this amazing woman, Miyako Kamiya, wrote in her book. All human beings are supported by more or less a vague sense of mission. It's a sense of responsibility for what you're living for, and it's close to what you have to do in life. Those that don't discover purpose or their mission will suffer an unfulfilling existence, while those that do will experience a strong ikigai awareness. I mean, this book just blew me away, and it should be translated, but it has these statements like that throughout the book that just would blow your mind. And this vague sense of mission that we probably all at some stage several times in our life think, oh, I should do something. And either you start taking steps to maybe pursue that, or you don't. And for me and you, I know the last couple of years, especially for me, my life has changed once I started thinking, how can I, how can I thank Japan, get back to Japan and correct this misinterpretation of Ikigai, and how can I help others? And one thing I've noticed that's been completely different to all my other businesses is I've had people contact me offering to help, like saying, several people just reached out and said, I'm wanting to help you, like free of charge, because I think what you're doing is so amazing. And I just sort of blew my mind. So I think you've probably experienced that too. Once you have a sense of mission and your focus is on helping others, things happen. And you realize, as you mentioned before, you don't know it, but you eventually realize, gee, I'm happier and I'm more fulfilled and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, despite all the, all the hard work and frustration that goes into making a podcast or
Yeah.
making a course or writing a blog post. And believe me, for someone who struggled with schoolwork, had to do extra English,
Yes.
felt like I was a imposter sort of teaching English in Japan. Yeah, we can always find excuses not to do something. But if you can, find a sense of mission in your life and you take steps to pursue it, things start to happen.
Mate, I've never spent so much time filling my downtime with something before. So, before when you had downtime, at least me, there'd be not much to do. I would even describe it as maybe I was bored and I had, a bit of blasé sort of attitude towards my day or my hour ahead of me or whatever. Whereas now there's not a moment in my day where I'm not thinking about I could be doing this for the podcast, this for one of my courses, etc. And that has never happened before. And when I was at school, I was not the kind of student who studied, who put time and effort into anything because I didn't appreciate or enjoy anything of that process that I was learning. And when people told me you need to find your purpose, my purpose kind of got thrust on me when I was 21. My girlfriend at the time became pregnant, and therefore I was going to be a dad. We've been happily married now for 25 years, and everything else went away. My purpose, my potential, my idea of potentially seeking out my true purpose in life was overshadowed by this purpose of a little child coming into the world that needed my help, and it all became all encompassing, and it was always going to be only about the kid, and then his brother when he was born 4 years later, and my wife, and it was just going to be about that part of my life. And that was a great purpose to have, but it's not a lifelong ongoing purpose. It doesn't last forever, and it doesn't fulfill you in the same way that this new purpose of mine fulfills me. And I remember realizing that purpose had a use by date, in that when my kids kind of came out and said, we're old enough now, we don't really need
Don't need
old man to help me with my life. We're going to fly the coop. I was like, oh, wow, that's my purpose gone. Like, what do I do now? How am I going to redirect my energy into something positive and create good in the world? When I have come across purpose in literature or in books or in talks or in places where I went for guidance about how I'm going to find my purpose, the place I went to was Tony Robbins once. All I left with was more confusion about what purpose was, and more frustration about not being able to find it or seek it out, or how to work it, or how to make it work for me. and that was really challenging. So I think the Western culture about talking about purpose kind of misses the ball and makes it about a thing that you have to work out in your head before you seek out and make it happen. Whereas it's not that at all. It's something that came just because I decided to give, and I didn't realize that that's what was going to come from it. It just came. And the first step was make yourself available to other people and help other people. And when I think about the people on the planet that stand out as having had an amazing purpose in life, like Mother Teresa, like Mahatma Gandhi, like Nelson Mandela, like all those people who are household names, they didn't make it about themselves. They made it all about other people. And they just happened to be the vehicle by which that led the voice to the particular struggle of the tribe that they were leading, is kind of how it feels for me. That's what I get from those amazing people and others that I didn't mention.
Yeah, this goes back to this idea of serving others, and often being of service to others less fortunate than you. But going back to how you found this sense of mission and purpose, Cami Amiko sort of states there's 3 ways we can find a sense of mission. And one is you just look for it in an area of interest. Another is you make a conscious decision to solve, a particular problem. Or the other is it might find you. So it seems, in a way, it found you, and then you decided, I'm going to help people, with what I've been struggling with. And I wanted to mention another aspect of Ikigai is freedom. And Kamiya says we're not really free because we have constraints, but we can have a sense of freedom. And so she says it's really important that despite life's constraints, that we feel freedom through our choices. And we always have the freedom to make choices. And even if those choices are, self-sacrificing. So obviously as a parent, you make a lot of choices for your children that mean you're giving up time or money or maybe a passion. And that's an expression of freedom as well, or delayed gratification, that you won't do something now because it's going to benefit you in the future. So that's probably something your community struggles with. They've probably lost freedom, maybe with their physical movement, and that'd be very hard to deal with because it's something they go through every waking moment.
Yeah.
But I would hope that maybe this Ikigai need, that we're not really free, but we can have the feeling of freedom in our choices. I hope that could sort of help them with their decision-making process, along with this idea that if you can feel your life is moving forward in a positive direction, even in that moment, you can feel a little bit better because you're kind of feeling Ikigai. There's one quote, this is probably my favorite quote and made me realize the power of a sense of mission. So this is what Kamiya wrote in her diary as she was writing this book. I'll just grab it. So this is the book, Ikigai ni Tsuite.
Yep.
So it was published in 1966. So not from this book, from her diary, she wrote, "In the afternoon, I went to the Van Gogh exhibition in Kyoto. I was overwhelmed by powerful green. I felt once again that I should devote myself to expression. At the exhibition and during my train ride home, I continued to ruminate on this and repeated to myself, devote the rest of your life completely to this mission. I should finish my dissertation as soon as possible so I may embark on a work to fulfill my mission." And so her mission was writing, and she desperately wanted to write this book. So imagine yourself if you'd gone into the city, you've gone to some exhibition, you're inspired by an artist, and then on the train ride home, you're thinking, I've got to devote myself to something in my life. And that is so powerful. I mean, to think, not for your glory and fame, but because you have this strong sense of mission. So maybe you've found that in what you're doing now, and I think I found it in what I'm doing now. So
That's brilliant, man. Speaking of that, where can people find more about you and your podcast?
So they can go to ikigaitribe.com, and I have actually got some worksheets that's sort of similar to the Venn diagram that they could download. And I've also got, like you, podcasts.
Awesome, mate. I'll make sure that there are links available at the website at recoveryafterstroke.com that link back to ikigaitribe.com, where people can learn a little bit more about you, listen to your podcast. And I feel like we're going to have another conversation about the amazing work that you're doing, because I think it's going to make a massive difference to my community. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Love to come back, Bill. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to us catching up in person, hopefully soon.
Same here, mate. I wouldn't enjoy anything more at the moment. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill.
Discover how to heal your brain after stroke. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com. Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.